week 8 stuff. All right, let's start with a new map. And I made a little list of things to make sure I don't skip anything today. Week 8. Not much. All right, so we've been basically dealing with like empty worlds and just spawning things in or using these templates, right? We're going to start from scratch, and I'm going to create a new level with the sky. Fantastic. And we don't need this. Okay, great. And we're going to do a landscape. So here are these modes. We've only looking at the mode for placing objects, but you also have some other modes here that we're going to touch on today. And the first one being a landscape. So by pressing the landscape mode, I now am about to generate a flat plane that could be deformed, and we can create mountains and valleys and stuff like that inside of the tool. You can also import landscapes from other tools. That's completely fine if you want to make it. And there's like really cool things in Houdini where you can actually do weather patterns and erosion and stuff, and you could simulate 200 years of erosion on your landscape. It's like insane stuff. But this is pretty cool just to get us started. We have the parameters here on the side. The first thing I'm going to note is landscapes can be very large and they can be very bulky, like a lot of polygons, and we're trying to do everything optimized. Also, in VR, we really can't see that far, right? There's really, it's kind of like around 2 meters around you could see, and there's like a middle ground, but the far things, they could just be like 360 images because you can't get to them unless you teleport, which we'll show you in a second. But still, you don't need big landscapes in VR. So we're going to bring this down a little bit and say, just make it smaller, right? Because that still gives us a great horizon line, and that's a third of the size of a landscape. So that's just being smart when we start off. Everything else I'm keeping the same, and I'm just going to say create. This is, again, it is a lot of polygons, so this stuff will be a little bit slower to process. Maybe you want to use the XR Labs computers are more than welcome to for this project, or you can make this smaller, right? If I want to manage this and I want to go back and make it smaller, I can delete it and do one that's even smaller, so it's not taking up a lot of resources, right? So this is probably, but no bigger than this, I would say. So it's automatically taking me to the next tab, which is sculpting, and the sculpting it gives you this circle, this is just like Photoshop. Like this is like a paint tool. It has a fall off, it has a size, a radius, and that fall off is like an alpha, right? And I can make it smaller, or I can make it the tool strength, right? So brush size can go down. And then I'm just painting topology. Right, I'm making mountains. I'm just left clicking and creating mountains. So this is also kind of hiding our horizon line, so that we can't see those edges. And if I want to make a valley, I think I can. Let's see if I can shift. If I hit shift, I can make valleys, right? Mountains, valleys. And there's a whole bunch of other tools we can do. We can bring in patterns. And then we don't need to go into these, but we also have erosion simulation, right? We have water erosion. You can add in noise. You can also smooth things out. Like maybe I think this is a little bit too rough. I can smooth it out and see how it's kind of averaging it out, right? So it's a little bit less pronounced. So there's all sorts of tools in here. There's a cool one called, we can also flatten, right? So I could choose a point where I don't want to be any higher than, and then we're making like a table, right? So that's like if you're going to be doing a road, you might use flatten and create a road like that. And it basically takes the height of whatever you select first and makes everything that height. So when I come back down here, I can make everything that height. So that's good. That gets us a little playing field here in the center for our character, and maybe just a little bit more in the distance over there. Very good. And if I wanted to make it stronger, watch this. I'm just going to make this huge peak. All right. And then right-click and bring it back down. Okay, so our world's looking a little checkerboardy, so let's worry about doing a material. Now, I've done sculpting, and I have this tool. You can see that this tool is still here. I don't want to do any other, I don't want to be throwing in models. I don't want to play anything in this mode. So as soon as you're done with the topology, get back out of it, right? So now I can start placing things, and it's much quicker to move. All right, and so now let's make a material for this. And this is going to be done in this is going to be a custom kind of material for landscapes only. We're going to make a material called M class landscape. Open it up. And instead of normal UVing, we're going to deal with landscape UVs. It's a different kind of thing. There's a lot of repetitive patterns, and it wants to know about level of detail with all these repetitive patterns. So let's just use landscape UVs, landscape layer coordinates, and then we're going to bring in a material. Or we're going to bring in a texture for a material. I don't know where all my textures are right now, so I'm just going to go to my root and choose textures, and here's all the textures I can use. And it doesn't have to make sense, right? Let's, for instance, we have some character textures that we brought in. We have some eyeballs. We have some kind of silly stuff. Let's bring in this noise. Looks pretty cool. And then let's bring in, I don't know. All these noises look really cool. And if I plug it in, save, go back to the landscape, I could choose it, or I could drag it in. Where'd it go? It's right in front of me. Oh, right there, the purple. I wasn't thinking about purple. I was thinking it was going to be like grass. Boink. All right, so now it's going to turn into that color once it compiles all the shaders. And we're just going to see a repetitive pattern of that off into the distance, and that's all it is. But that's not really that, it's not that great, because imagine if like you were doing photoreal, you'd want to have rocks and grass and dirt and all that kind of stuff. Right? This is a little unidimensional, but I can imagine this land. This is kind of like out of Wreck-It Ralph or something. Anyway, so we're going to use multiple materials. I'm going to show you how to blend between them, which is a fun little trick. So we have this one as well, and let's grab one more unique one. So the textures, and maybe we'll do something realistic like a rock. Okay, and then I'm going to take this layer blend object. It's empty at first, and I want to use 3 layers, so I'm going to have 3 different arrays elements in here. So 1, 2, and 3, and I just have to give them names so they're easy for me to figure out. So yeah, let's just give it a name. This one's going to be called purple, and then the next, and I'm going to make sure that it's 100% being used, so give it a weight of 1, and then we're going to have rainbow, which is the next one down, and give it a 1, because we want to use it all. And then this last one is going to be stone. And give it a 1. And we're going to do it height blend for all 3 of them. All right, so that's like kind of the weird thing. Just follow my instructions or grab this node from me or something. And then we give it a color, and then we're also going to give it an alpha, which is that height. There we go. And we can plug it in. And I'm just going to do color for right now, but if you want to, you can also do this for normal maps so that it has like more of a depth kind of feel to it if you want that rocks to have that cragginess to it. So every single thing you want to use here, you have to make 3 of them. And you can just copy and paste these nodes and use them again for the normals or ambient occlusion. If you remember, we did that bitmap to material and we generated a bunch of these. So this could be like a really complicated or at least busy material if you want to do a lot of these other things. I want to go ahead and get rid of some of these textures because by default there's a 0.5 for metallic and emissive. Or I think there's 0.5 for metallic and 0 for roughness. So I'm just going to give it a single. I'm holding down 1, clicking. I just want to make sure that there's no metallic. And then let's make it slightly rough. And let's go paint. Save. So by default, it has all of them on top of each other. And the material is just kind of black until I start actually painting it. I'm going to come back over here to my landscape, and then painting is over here. And I should have some layers right there. Let's go ahead and save all. And this map will be called VR Map 1. Define how to start this display layers. So we have the same tool and some of the same things like the strength and the brush size. So I can break it down. We can start painting. But where are our layers? High blend, high blend, high blend. Save, save, save. Let us see. Height map. Layers. I must be going crazy. It's over here. That's great. Landscape coordinates. See, sometimes I like to make mistakes just so you guys can learn from my mistakes. I made one earlier today just to make sure, because I don't do this that often. And I did a bunch of different stuff inside of it. We use landscape coordinates, layer blend. That stuff's all fine. Height blend. Height blend, height blend. Auto none. Auto none. Height blend, height blend, height blend. Alright. Save. Let's just build our lighting just to make sure. This shouldn't take too long. Sometimes you'll see some like the grid marks will stay on the landscape and you can get rid of them by building. I just went over to build and said build with my light only. Okay. Paint. Maybe I go to paint here. No, it's a different one. So I'll just open up my other map. That's why it's like a cooking show. You have to make them. Let me open up my other map I did then. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, now it's going to be done. I confused it. Oh, there they are. I just had to finish that build. Okay. Anyway, so this I'm going to repeat. This is important for the layers to show up. Say build lighting only, and then it's ready to go. It's processed the landscape, and it's ready to be painted. So now I have these different layers right here, and we just need to store some of this data. So I'm just going to hit this. I'm going to create information for it so it can store it on the hard drive. So just going to say this and save it on this. That's fine. So this is just giving it a file on the hard drive that it can store its data to. Right? And save again. Cool. So now I just have to select highlight the whole layer, and then you can paint it. So right now by default I think it's all this first one, but I can choose a second one and I can start painting on top of it. Give it a second to figure it all out. It's storing it there. And then if I wanted some stone, I could paint that. Like the stones going over my mountains. Then, and the same tools apply, right? I could take down the strength that's doing a little bit too much, and then do a little bit of here, So I'm painting little edges there and blending it all in. Obviously, you guys might be a little more artistic than I am. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Right, just a little. Great. And when you come down in here, there, that's what it will kind of look like for us. And now that everything's kind of compiled, we're doing it in real time. Cool. Obviously, you might want to do like more photorealistic. And now I'm done. That's me creating a landscape. So what are we missing now? We're missing like all the stuff, like all the foliage, and that's the next little button over here. We have a foliage tool, and what it's going to do is it's going to take that mesh that we have and it's going to instance it. It's just like we did with the big asteroid belt. It's going to make it so it's not going to be geometry that we can collide against. We can walk right through it because we don't want to have to actually compute all that collision and stuff like that. So it's instancing it, and the starter content has some grass and some trees, but I've already set a precedent for doing silly things. So I'm going to look for my static meshes, and I might want to paint a pumpkin, and I might want to paint some eyeballs. And I might want to paint this asteroid in here. And when I highlight it, I can have some details for it. Like, let's bring this down a little bit. How do I want to make them each one be a different scale, right? Do I want to have lock just the X and Y and have just different heights and make it random? Do I want to have some of them be bigger or smaller? Do I want to have some of them, do I want to align to the normals? So like if we're painting on a slope, is it going to point this way or is it always going to point up, right? So just go through these settings and take a look at them. They're about how you want to make things randomized and have a little more naturalistic feel. And now that I have these three items, again, I have this tool that's a brush, right? I can paint a big spot or I can paint little bits, and it'll do an equal amount of these. If I wanted to have twice as many pumpkins, I would just add a pumpkin in here twice or something like that. And so let's go ahead and paint. Whoa! Eyeballs are a little bit much. So maybe look over these eyeballs and bring them down to 0.1. I think we had that problem when I was doing asteroids. There we go. Little pumpkin patch. Maybe a little bit less dense. And even less dense. And I have to emphasize, it doesn't have to be just trees, right? But it little scatters it out. Cool? So you put little grass patches or whatever you want to. So there's one of the rules that says that it can't spawn if it's less than a 45-degree angle, so you wouldn't have weird things on the edge where they'd be like rolling off anyway. Cool. So there we go. Here's my Halloween world. And then I'm done. So those are the two things we did, or the three things, I guess. We did a landscape, we painted a landscape, then we added some foliage, and we now have this VR world that we really can't see the edge of the world now. We've kind of hidden it, and it's, we've hidden our horizon line. And then once I'm done with it, let's get out of there so I don't accidentally continue to paint things as I move around. And then if I hit play, by default, I'm going to be this character, because we started off this project with a third-person template. So I want to get now into these templates and how to manipulate them. Let's find our player start. Player starts below ground. That's why he dropped below ground. If we hit play again, I have no idea why he's doing this. I'm sure I messed it up on another tutorial. But he's going around. As I said, no collisions, right? It wouldn't be able to process that. There is a tutorial for if you do want them to have collisions. It would just be as soon as you touch one of them, if you want to chop down a tree, you replace it with something that has collisions. You can chop down things. I can see that tutorial if you're interested in it. So now I'm just surveying my world, just a guy looking out, and he's stuck. Great, there's my eyeballs. So over my world settings, and it's not always there by default, you have to go to Window and World Settings and open it up. we have this game mode's overrides. And right now we have no game mode override because we're using a third-person template, and by default it'll be third person. I can actually override it and say, be a regular game mode, don't be a character. And now if I hit play, I just have WASD, and I can just fly around. So that might be useful for being able to see things and not be this character. All right. So we've talked about game modes a little bit, and we might make our own game mode in a second, or at least we'll be looking at the VR template game modes. So I think a few of you, we've talked about this third-person character. I'm going to throw my blueprints. And I have this third-person character where we have these things called jump and input access. These are all inputs, right? This is our button presses and stuff. But what they are is like input action jump is a combination of spacebar. It's also PlayStation triangle. It's also Xbox something. It's also mobile development 2-tap. Like it's a bunch of different events that are combined into one. And you actually make those over here in your project settings. And it's called input. And you can see that jump is actually spacebar, face button, VR controller trigger. It's also an Oculus touchpad if you're doing something else, right? So this is the third person key bindings. I'm going to export these and put them on my desktop. And I can actually, if I ever want to load these, I can also just load them in the same way, and we might do that later on. These are third person bindings. Now, let's start doing some VR. I'm going to add a new template. And here I can start adding in all this stuff, so you can bring in the rolling ball template or the flying saucer template and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to bring in our VR template. Okay? And the VR template is added in. And so that's all these folders right here. There's virtual reality assets, and there's virtual reality blueprints and maps. So let's take a look at that stuff real quick. Let's save everything here, and let's just take the VR template for a spin. It has two different modes of transportation. I'm going to do the startup map first. Now, if you're creating a brand new project, you can just make it a VR template. You don't have to worry about adding in the VR template to your old project. So if I was to put in my headset, I could be in this map, and I can choose between two different modes of locomotion. We have right here, this is a HMD plus gamepad. This is I want to look forward and hit the space bar and teleport wherever I'm looking. Right? This is if you didn't have controllers. You would do it that way. But we have motion controllers, so we want to do this way, where I'm actually going to use my controllers, point to locations, choose the rotation I want to be oriented to, and then teleport to those locations, okay? So it's just telling me that I can choose this map. I'm just going to go ahead and choose it right here, motion controller map. Here we are, and this is our new template. What's kind of funny is because I changed the engine sphere collisions, I've completely changed the collisions for all squares or all cubes in my engine. So these are all going to roll around. Oh well. Yeah, that's going to be real silly. We'll see. Okay. I'm going to hit, instead of hitting play now, if I have a headset plugged in and it's ready to go, I can do VR preview. If I don't have a headset, this will be grayed out. So I'm going to say VR preview, and now I'm inside of a headset. And you see they're all rolling everywhere. And they went flying up and they're landing. Let's go ahead and fix the game engine real quick. Go into our sphere. Let's look at the collisions. And let's delete this collision. And then we'll add back in a regular box. So you can kind of see the edge. There's green right there. So save all, and now we can try it again. There we go. It's got a little tight. There we go. We tighten it back up. And here I am inside my world. I can actually see my controllers right here. see my controllers. And can you see the hands? No. I can see the hands. But the problem is they're not moving around and I can't teleport. And that's because I have the key bindings from the third-person template. So this is kind of tedious stuff, but I know that a lot of people are going to get stuck with this. That's why I want to make sure it's in the screen recording for today, so that if you're not starting from scratch, this won't be a problem at all. But since I'm trying to use the same project, so you have everything in one place, I'm just showing you how to navigate these things. So I hope I have one from before. If not, let's just show real quick. Oops, let's not open up Cinema 4D. Let's just show creating a new one. So we're going to be in 421. Hi Cinema, bye Cinema. And this is how you create a VR template from scratch. All right, so new project, and then blueprints, and we'll just do a VR template. And this is going to be called VR template. And once it opens up, I can go to that project settings. Super fun. While this is happening, let's take a look at these items. So this is a blueprint called BP Pickup Cube. And these already have the programming in place for being able to pick them up, right, and throw them. So this is already here ready for you. You can just change out the mesh here and change out the material here, and they can be anything you want to. So just that's all kind of the homework for the interaction is to put in 2 new meshes and make separate ones. So just like any blueprint, if I edit just this one right here, it's just this one. But if I find BP Pickup Cube, which I'm hitting Control B, find the control browser, if I change this one, it'll change all of them, right? So if I want to make some sort of change that every one of them, when I drop it as a particle effect, I would do that here. But if I want to change just one of them, I would do that here, okay? This is a instance of that class or an object of the class of BP Pickup Cube. So, but the one thing that's reliant upon is having collisions, right? You're actually not picking up the cube, you're picking up the collision, and the cube is going with it because the collisions are much smaller, optimized bit of geometry. You can imagine you're trying to pick up like a car. It doesn't want to pick up think about every single polygon. It wants to make a simplified collision that you can pick up a car, right? So if we look at the cube, we already fixed it. It is this thing right here. But if I were to make another instance of BP Pickup Cube and change this to a different mesh, like this little pumpkin top, I'd be picking up this collision right here, right? And some objects won't have collisions, especially things built in the engine. So if you're trying to pick something up and it won't pick up, that means check for collisions. And by default, the engine doesn't show them. You have to turn them on. Right? That by default doesn't show it. So I'm like, yeah, look at the collisions. There we are. Great. This is going to take forever. Oh, right, 86%. That's great. So I've made this one change, but now it is its item ID has a small cube texture, so I have to retexture it with the ones I want. All right, so that's the stem is fine, the outside is fine. I need to put the inside back in. There we go. So now it's my audio reactive pumpkin top. And I can peek inside and I can manipulate some of the items, like the pivot point, and put it on the ground. And by default, these are simulating physics. So that's all part of the blueprint. I'm so impatient. I want to get in VR. Hurry up. Well, while this is doing this, I'm noticing that when I hit play, you're only seeing a fraction of my screen. So I think that I want to I'm going to Google that real quick so we can have a better tutorial. UE4 Oculus VR viewport. Spectator screen. Nope. Nope. View VR 100%. Yay! Beautiful. Okay, so I have this. This is a blank new project right here. This is just the VR stuff. I'm going to go over to my project settings. I want to export these bindings. Input. And then where it has these mappings, I'm going to export it. And then put it on my desktop. And these are my VR bindings. So I don't need this project anymore. Let's go in here, and then I'm going to import desktop VR bindings. And so it changed all these now. So these are about teleporting and grabbing. And now we're ready to go. Save all. Let's jump in. You can kind of see. Okay. So now, if I put it in my hand correctly, you can see these hands. And then if I hold down the thumb, I have the teleporting. And if I rotate the thumb, I change the orientation. So I want to teleport over here and look the other way. The rotation's not working. But anyway, I can go anywhere I want to, and I get closer to these things. You see it? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was trying to look up. If you guys can find that while I'm jamming out in here, it'll be better for the screen recording. It's something that just started happening recently. It's like I could do like a little blueprint command saying don't do that anymore. Enter the VR editor mode. Set screen percentage to 100%. Let's find my editor window. Let's do tilde. And paste that in. There we go. So that's the fix. If I want to make sure that happens every time I hit play, I'm just going to go over to my level blueprint. On event begin play. This will be better for your guys' screen recording. So this is another thing that's tedious, but it's something that will help out. Begin play. Event begin play. There we go. And we'll say when we start, execute the console command screen percentage at 100%. You just copy and paste this note for me if you want. And now when I hit play, it's the right way. Cool. We can also do full screen and it'll be full screen. So another one of these and say full screen. Play. Well, there's one for full screen. I'll figure it out. Full screen one. Now, anyway, you guys can see enough. So now let's go play with our pickup cubes. Teleporting, grab it, throw it. Super effective. Let's go over here. I'm not going to be able to pick it up. Maybe I can. There we go. Hit the Oculus button so it went out. Okay. And you see how I'm not actually touching the mesh? That's because the collision was much larger than the mesh. So that's just something to keep in mind. If we look at the mesh itself, and we look at collisions, you can see that I was picking it up from this collisions are right here. So you can make these more precise. I can delete this if your interaction isn't good enough and go do an auto collision here, and it'll be much more precise. See that? I made it much more precise. But it will be more processing. It's not that much, but there we go. So now we have this character, this pawn that we can move around, and that's this. So we might not have used that term before, but when you're using different, when you're being different characters, that's called possessing, and you possess pawns, and that's just, and it's even called VR pawn. And these are different things. If we wanted to find the third-person character, that would be our pawn, and then we have to possess it as player 0. We are player 0. So that's the terminology we'll use. You can also make a custom game mode. We won't worry about that for right now. And then you would select the game mode here, and it would be VR pawn. And just like before, if I go to just regular game mode and I hit play, I'm just flying around again, or I should be. But if I go back to the way it works is that this one is player 0, so this always overrides. If I were to get rid of this and hit play, I'm flying around again. I want to be it again. Let's go to our VR pawn, which is called motion controller. Motion controller pawn, put it back in, and then now I'm in VR mode again. So this is important. Wave in the sky. So this is important for when you want to manipulate things. If you don't have a VR headset, you can still be a third-person character. Put that in and run around so that you can do different modes. Because you don't want to, if you don't have a VR headset, you still want to be able to make things. You can still make your landscapes. So let's go revisit our landscape and put in the pawn. So let's look at all our maps. And we said ours was going to be VR map 01, and let's bring in our VR character so we can see what the world looks like. Blueprints, and it is this motion controller pawn. Bring it in, wherever way I want to face to start off with, and then say none. And by default, this one will be player 0. Right here, and then we're in VR world. Cool. And this is what my world looks like now. And I also have some previous blueprints, like my light color, right? So these from, no, not that one. These guys again. If I hold down Alt, I can drag them out and make more. Let's take a lot of them. So I've already prettied up my world like before with all these lights. And then now where's my character? My character is right there. Let's give him some ammunition. So let's bring in a cube. And on top of that cube, let's take some of these BP pickup cubes. So pick up cube, and there it is. So let's make a little tray of ammo for us. And let's hit play. Cool. And I see my little lights. Oh, horrible throw. Really bad. Oh, there you go. All right. Oh, so this is an important part. So it's not letting me go anywhere because I haven't designated where I want to go. So we have to make certain areas navigatable. And I'm glad I did that. So you don't want to be able to go everywhere, and sometimes you want to designate where people can't go and can go. Like, for instance, maybe that you could teleport up into here, but we don't want anyone to teleport on the other side of our pumpkins because it will reveal an area that we didn't set up for them. So when I was showing you that you could see collisions, but they're not turned on by default, navigation is the other thing is not on by default, and I have no navigation on. So just navigation, or it's called a nav mesh. Bring it in, and everywhere I can teleport is green. And this is just a volume, like our collision boxes. And as I do that, I can navigate more places. So now everywhere that's green, I can navigate here. And you can make a bunch of these and fill them up and make little pieces. You can also edit them in case like this square is not the right thing for you. You can always, like for instance, I don't want to be able to teleport into these pumpkins. I might come over here to this geometry editing, and I can actually pick these little points out and move them. So I can create a custom little space, and I'm not limited to just making a box. Oh, never mind, it's not doing it. If that would work. Let's see. We'll give it a spin. We'll see. I thought that was going to work. Let's hit play. And now I can navigate. And you see how I'm trying to go outside of that zone, and it won't let me. This is the edge of that volume. So let's see why my lights are working. Look like it. Yeah, it's changing. It's working. So here's my interactions. Super easy. Get going. That might be the extent of the things. Let's see. Game modes, input settings. We don't need to make our own. We now have brought in our own VR. We have our own VR pawn. Collisions with pickup clue. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We can change these here. Remember that you can just drag and drop in different materials and different meshes. Right, so we have, get rid of this. We now have a generic HMD, right? We want to throw headsets around. But it looks like the HMDs are really small. See that? So we can make this pickup cube bigger. And now it's better. Let's see them all topple over. There we go. So now we're throwing HMD again. Not the best collisions. We could probably remake those better. Cool. And then all the physics properties are designated by the mass, how far you can throw it, how much it bounces, and that's a static mesh component. Like it's simulating physics, but it's also by default weighs like this amount. You can always override that and make it everything heavier or lighter. Again, you can also do it one by one by going to the component and doing it here instead. This would only change just this one cube. Going in here would change it for all cubes. In a week, or next week, we'll get into the blueprint code, but you see it's not much for for doing this. What we're doing is we're saying when we press the button for grab, whatever I'm touching starts simulating physics, or in simulating physics, and it gets attached to my hand. And then when I drop it, when I let go of the button, it's going to start simulating physics, and then it's going to detach from my hand. That's the code right there, and we'll get into that next week, but you can kind of see what's under the hood. This is all it is for this BP pickup cube. So that's that for today. So what we have like 30 or 40 minutes left in class. This is plenty. You guys can work in class, and then if you want to, I have the keys for the XR lab. I can also let like 5 people or 5 pairs of people go do VR over at the VR lab, and you can watch your experiences and get those done for the weekend as well, so you don't have to come back. Cool. All right. So